Hello, friends. It's Chapo, and that is a number of news articles that came out over the weekend that tally up with frightening detail the extent to which Americans across every single gender and class line are more alone than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, I do want to talk about like the homeless thing a little bit because I don't know. I think that's interesting too because that's another thing where there's just almost no answer to it. Where no one really presents an answer. It's the same like shitty
Move it around.
Right. It's the same like kicking the can and shitty back and forth that we've seen for years. It's like one group of people that has like an insane psychotic reaction to just like seeing a homeless person at all. And then a reaction to it that has been, unbeknownst by the people saying it, just moved so far beyond any policy that it's just making fun of those people for being freaked out.
Yeah.
It's like we've talked about this before, how like a lot of like homeless policy, it's been moved so far to the right because, you know, what was once there should be housing for these people becomes like, oh, well, I think these people should be able to sleep on the sidewalk without there being spikes put down.
Right.
I don't think there should be a law against them eating out of the garbage.
Because if there's no solution to these problems, then the only question politically for me as a well-off person in the cities is how am I going to feel about this? And so it becomes another virtue to hoard. Ooh.
Right.
Yes, keep them around so that I can feel superior because I can say it doesn't bother me.
Right. And I do want to say that, like, while I do think that, like, a lot of this where people just, like, see a homeless person at all, like, they see a tent and they start getting freaked out, I think that's insane. I do sympathize, like, with the idea of, like, yeah, being a woman on a subway at night and there's a guy who's, like, severely mentally ill from being forced to live outside for 20 years. That probably is scary. A lot of it probably is scary, and it is a fucking terrible situation. But again, it's another one of those things where, like, we're so far removed from any solution outside of, like, authorize the cops to just shoot them all and throw their bodies into a mass grave.
Yes.
But to the point about loneliness, I just want to highlight a few of these things in these news articles. One of them says, like, just basically headline: Americans 15 and older are spending a lot more time alone than they did in 2013. The trend started before the pandemic, but it seems unquestionable that the pandemic like supercharged a phenomenon that was already beginning to trend in that direction. It says, according to the Census Bureau's American Time Use Survey, the amount of time the average American spent with friends was stable at 6.5 hours per week between 2010 and 2013. Spending time with friends, spending time with other people, being around other people. And I think what that does to people psychologically is, whether they're aware of it or not, creates a feeling of a tremendous fear and insecurity in your around yourself, so that like what you are spending your active time, your free time doing is, I don't know, like being on the internet, and like I said, whether it's crime or any other thing, I think people are social animals, and being alone is frightening. Being alone, it like you are weaker when you are alone than if you are, embedded in kind of like, friends, family, a community, or that, like, people who you spend your free time with having fun or just talking or relating to other people, being around other people. And I think it makes people much more easily frightened. And I think it makes them feel, like the world is coming to an end, because in a sense it is, if like you're not spending time with any other people.
Yeah, that is the literal end of humanity. It's the end of the most meaningful thing, the basis for why we're a special animal.
And it is what speaking of our last week's episode, that is what our rulers are consciously seeking. A world where they are just one consciousness in a tube, amusing themselves eternally, and no other person is worthy of any reciprocal relationship. It's like replacing all reciprocal ties between humans with technology, so that you are just an encased consciousness eternally. And then you get to rule over us as we just destroy ourselves, because we still have some humanity to try to save her. And we have nothing to do but act out, which is why we're seeing all this stuff getting worse and worse, and all of our responses to it being channeled into the dumbest, most counterproductive ways and the passions, because we don't have any guide. We have no idea other than what our media consumption is telling us, which is just a fucking mirror to our own neuroses.
I saw a post this morning that I thought very uncannily summed this all up. This is by a guy named Alexander Wang, who is, of course, a CEO at a company that deals with artificial intelligence. His comment this morning was, the real problem with other cities, LA, New York City, Miami, relative to San Francisco, is that people are severely over-socialized. You need time alone to think, reflect, and build plans to do anything important. In LA, NYC, Miami, the constant social roller coaster steamrolls all individual thought.
But that is, if T-800 is going to go back in time and stop anyone, I think it's the author of that post.
Levels of eye contact in New York and LA are dangerously high.
Oh man, everyone is socializing so much across the country. It's absurd. People are hanging out with each other so much. Thank God you can go to San Francisco where no one has any interaction with anybody else.
Well, I mean, like to your point, Matt, about how like this all serves the designs of our vampiric overlords quite nicely, is because the idea is like, no, like time that you're spending socializing is not time. Is time that you're not being productive.
Yes,
it's time that you're not working to build important things and to focus on important tasks and thoughts.
To have any unalienated human values or experiences or connections of any kind.
And I mean, a populace that has relationships with each other, that knows each other and talks to each other, is the most dangerous thing politically.
Yes.
Any type of like massive formation of people who are all fighting for each other's interests is the very thing that is almost impossible right now with methods of communication and media consumption habits. That is the most dangerous thing.
Can't have it. Get everybody working.
Can't have it. Commiserating. Can't have it.
Commiserating, talking to each other. Can't have it.
Look, this is what it is. You're gonna do what you're gonna do. One more thing about evidence of severe social rot. Felix, I saw you share this story just like an hour before we started recording the show, and I started reading it and was absolutely aghast. This is the New Yorker article about how hospice care has been like supercharged into this billion-dollar industry by essentially like door-to-door salesing people on dying.
Yeah, I thought this was insane, obviously. But it did, okay, we're gonna get into this a little bit, but just to give you the broad strokes, it basically for-profit hospices, which another monstrous thing in our healthcare system that should not exist. They are because it's a tough business. You constantly need people who are dying. So how do you solve that problem?
Yeah,
you tell people you treat people who aren't dying. You tell them they are dying, or maybe you just tell the insurance company that they're dying. One thing that this did make me think, getting more conspiratorial, is okay, the massive trend online of self-diagnosis. There's always been a huge thing of self-diagnosis online. It was usually a thing for like the most online, the most dedicated keyboard warriors in the world. It's the thing you do when you have just forsaken real life. But now, like most things that were big for like the biggest computer users in 2012, everyone does it now. Everyone self-diagnoses.
Yep.
And I mean, okay, if I'm running a for-profit healthcare system that needs people to buy things that they don't need medically, that would be incredible for me. I would love that. If people are constantly telling each other and themselves that they have diseases that they don't have.
And and hospice care is a particularly ghoulish example of this because, as you alluded to, Felix, how do you have a for-profit model on providing care for people who are dying when, as soon as they need it, they're going to die very soon, very shortly after the services are engaged? So I just want to read from the beginning of this article. Over the years, Marcia Farmer had learned what to look for. As she drove the back roads of rural Alabama, she kept an eye out for dilapidated homes and trailers with wheelchair ramps. Some days she'd ride the one-car ferry across the river to Lower Peachtree and other secluded hamlets where a few houses lacked running water and bare soil was visible beneath the floorboards. Other times she'd scan church prayer lists for the names of families with ailing members. Farmer was selling hospice, which strictly speaking is for the dying. To qualify, patients must agree to forego curative care and be certified by doctors as having less than 6 months to live. But at Aceracare, a national chain where Farmer worked, she solicited recruits regardless of whether they were near death. She canvassed birthday parties at housing projects and went door to door promoting the program to loggers and textile workers. She sent colleagues to cadge rides on the Meals on Wheels van or to chat up veterans at the American Legion bar. We'd find rundown places where people were more on the poverty line, she told me. You're looking for uneducated people, if you will, because you're able to provide something for them and meet a need. This is like, hey, I need the Glengarry leads on people who are dying or who think they're dying. Well, listen, what can I get you to do to forsake curative care? What can I get you? Look, I'm going to put you in hospice care right now. Let's do a deal. What can I take to get you some hospice right now? But just the idea of trolling, just evident. We talk about visible poverty, just trolling for people at the fucking margins of society. Who, if they're not dying now, they're like, well, it's a pretty good chance they're gonna be soon. So let's just get them in now. Sign on. Let's get them to sign on the line that is dotted.
Yeah, they're really
Pretty
scraping
gross.
to the bottom of the barrel here. Really trying to get that profit engine anywhere that's left. Hey, you know that communal experience of gathering your loved ones around you and moving towards a good death. Where can we wet our beak there?
Yeah.
How can we get in there?
When you talk about creating something beyond an American NHS and nationalizing every step of production and care, and people always say, what are you going to do for people who work in the current industry? What are you going to do about their jobs? Keep in mind, these are the jobs they're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
The lady
Get
who's
a new
cruising for
fucking job.
wheelchairs. Yes. No.
There should be a bit more
I don't
productive
care.
use of that work. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. The creative destruction of the market never seems to apply to the rent-seeking vampires in the privatized health insurance industry. And Felix, your comment on this is exactly right. These people's jobs, their wealth, and their control over the system needs to be taken away by force.
Yeah.
Without any remuneration for them, just taken away from them. No, America cannot exist as a country with any kind of privatized health insurance system, top to bottom.
I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit whether it is, this woman whose job is, cruising for dying, or people who may be dying soon or definitely dying after she gets in contact with them, or, someone in the middle rungs of a health insurance company whose job is to tell people that a CAT scan or chemotherapy isn't covered. I don't care. Look, if it's like a job that pays $47,000 a year, I'm sure there's a bureaucratic job in the American NHS that they could fill. If they are making $400,000 a year off this, they should be lucky that we don't put them in prison if that happens. I don't give a shit. I don't fucking care. No one ever cries like this for coal miners or anyone else.
Nope. Just a lot of vivid examples of social decay on today's episode. But you know what? Let's finish out today's episode. I'm tired of talking about Elon Musk. We've talked about it too often. I feel that well has run dry until until the next thing happens. But I thought we would close out today's episode with a few listener questions, listener sourced questions, and just have some fun and just see what our listeners are coming up with for the Chapo sounding board for advice, thoughts, comments, and concerns.